And welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so very much for listening to us. We talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple or Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, but you got to subscribe, because if you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. And speaking of Mondays, it is not one right now. We had scheduling conflicts yesterday, but it is Tuesday, and sometimes we drop them on Tuesdays too. And it's not only Tuesday, but it is post-game of the Tennessee-Mississippi State basketball game that just happened. We're going to break that down, talk about the Auburn game that's coming up for Tennessee. Going to do it all. But if you subscribe, you won't miss any of that, no matter when it drops. YouTube.com, A to Z Sports Tennessee Volunteers, apologies. A to Z Sports Tennessee Volunteers on YouTube. Go there, subscribe, notification bell, and you'll be notified when we go live if you hit the notification button. And you can come hang out, be a part of the show, comment on the show. It's always a ton of fun. At Charlie _Burris, that's at TNT, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports. And A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach writes on the internet. All right, Zach, don't know exactly how it is where you're at, but there was half a foot of snow in New Orleans. There's like 6 inches of snow in Florida and Texas today. It is a freaking ice block here in Knoxville. It's supposed to get down to like 7 degrees tonight. Stinking. Just like, let me sleep all day tomorrow. No, thank you. I don't need it. But what's up, man?
Yeah, pretty cold everywhere, it feels like. I think we're out of the way of the snow for the most part. But yeah, that's wild. Seeing like LSU Stadium covered in snow and the beach at like Panama City Beach and Pensacola and just all these coastlines that are usually you go this time of year to try to warm up, and it's kind of the opposite right now. Wow.
It is very strange. But I think I'm going to buy a plane ticket to Hawaii tomorrow. That's my plan. I'm out of here. Of course, we're going to talk Vols. As I just said, the Mississippi State Tennessee basketball game just ended. The Vols kicked that butt. They went out there, got back on track after in my opinion, a pretty ridiculous loss at Vandy over the weekend. We're going to talk about all that. I tweeted this. This is sort of our first ever basketball post-game edition of the show. I obviously do all the post-games with Jonathan Crompton here on this YouTube channel for football, but finally getting to do basketball, which really, for anybody who listens to this show regularly, you know that I'm more of a basketball guy even than I am a football guy. So that's going to be fun. And then transfer portal. Nice little running back pickup for the Vols in the portal this week. We're going to discuss all of that. It's going to be a ton of fun, and we'll get to that right after I tell you about the good folks at Zen Sports. Zen Sports just picked yet another grand prize winner, this time for the December Big Game Sweepstakes, but they're rolling out the VIP Players Club Sweepstakes for January. You don't want to miss this. This month, one grand prize winner will win a $10,000 bonus bet on the NFL Big Game in February, plus $10,000 cash or an alternative prize of $15,000 cash. You have the ability to earn entries on every bet you place in January and every dollar you wager, plus earn 10 times the entries on all parlay bets. It does not get better than this. If you don't win the grand prize, don't worry. You'll also have a shot at 5 smaller prizes, which could grant you a $1,000 bonus bet on the big game or $250 cash. And for new customers that use the code A2ZTN, that is ATOZTN, you'll receive 500 entries in addition to the entries you earn for the value of your qualifying bets. What are you waiting for? Head to zensports.com/sweepstakes for a full list of rules. And you can also get that $100 no danger first wager that we told you about all football season long. Zen Sports betting just got better. If you have a gambling problem, 1-800-889-9789. No danger. First wager limited to plus 500 odds. Qualify. Terms and conditions apply. A qualifying wager for a wager entry must have minimum odds of any leg of at least minus 250 or worse. American odds. For clarity, a wager of minus 251 does not qualify. A qualifying wager for entry must be made for a minimum amount of $5. Head to zinsports.com/sweepstakes for contest terms and conditions. Must be 21 or older in the great state of Tennessee to bet. All righty. Tennessee just whipped up on Mississippi State. That was a lot of fun. I will say the first maybe 5 minutes of that second half, Tennessee had it was like a 16-point lead at the half. Like they just played a really nice first half, super solid defense, scored the ball pretty nicely. But the first like 5 minutes of that second half, Mississippi State got it down to like 7 points, and they had a three that would have closed the gap to like 4 points. They missed it, thank God. But I was like, oh my gosh, if they do this, if they even make this close, it's probably going to be an annoying conversation on here where we have to be like, well, they won, but it wasn't blah, blah, blah. But no, they got it together. They ended up winning by a bunch. Even we actually started before the final score posted. What was that final score?
68-56.
68-56. So you only win by 12, but ultimately you had a lead larger than 20 at multiple points in that game. It was a blowout. But good times there, and we'll start off with that before we get into football and everything, because, as I said, it's sort of a post-game reaction show here, and I wanted to preview the Auburn game on Saturday, which is a big game for the Vols, has major implications for the SEC title race, of course. But, Zach, how'd you feel about this Mississippi State game?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can bounce back after a disappointing loss like that game against Vanderbilt, which we haven't had a show since that game, and that was one where you made a nice run at the end. Like that was almost what a comeback that would have been. But Chaz Lanier, misses the free throw at the end, and it's a game that you should have lost based on the way you played, but it would have been nice to still it. I don't know, what is it about playing at Vanderbilt? It's just a frustrating place to play. I hate watching the games on TV. The camera angle is weird. The court's weird. All of it's just a terrible experience. So it's one of those games where no matter how good Tennessee is, it's like, yeah, well, let's just forget that one ever happened. And it looks like they did, because they came out and they played a pretty good Mississippi State team, ranked 14th. I mean, like Zakai Ziegler said this week, every night in the SEC is a battle. It's almost like football, where it's the conference is so deep and you have to bring your A game. So when you have that little stretch that you're talking about where they close it to 7 points and they have a chance to really make it a game, you almost expect that to happen in most SEC games, home or away. Like you're going to have to weather that storm, the other team's best shot. And they did that pretty well. Lanier felt like he was back kind of what he's supposed to be. Scored, 23 points, I think, something like that. So a nice night for him. I think on a larger conversation here, I think some of the discourse around Chaz Lanier this season it's been somewhat unfair, because everything he does is compared to Dalton Connect, every single thing. And then when he doesn't have a Dalton Connect like game, it's like, oh, this guy he's not Connect. You haven't replaced Connect. And we talked about that going into the season, that you're never going to replace who Dalton Connect was. I mean, you've seen him have some really good games in the NBA. I'm not sure the Lakers really know how to use him at this point, but the Lakers are kind of a mess with that whole squad they have as it is. So, I mean, just that whole conversation I felt has been pretty unfair to Lanier, because he's just got to be himself. And some nights it is what it is. And luckily tonight it was good enough.
I have my mic on mute because my cat is over here banging on the door, which is really cool. Sorry. I think Mississippi State's last week is sort of a microcosm of what everybody is facing down in the SEC this week. So they they beat Ole Miss over the weekend. The game before that, Ole Miss went to Alabama, who's the number 4 team in America right now. They went to Alabama and won. Mississippi State beats Ole Miss this weekend. Then they have to go to Tennessee, and they get essentially blown out in that game. Like, that's the gauntlet of the SEC. You can beat a team that beats the number 4 team and then go and have your doors blown off by the number 6 team, and you're the number 14 team. Like, that's the SEC. It's a crazy league. I think Dykes, this is probably an exaggeration. I don't think I totally agree with him here. But he said that the SEC is on track to be a 13 bid league, which again, I'm not sure that I completely agree. There's a few teams like Texas, Oklahoma. Vandy's probably going to make it, but they're going to be
And
right
some of
on the
those bubble
line.
teams, they fall out near the end.
Yes, exactly. We'll see. But I mean, it is just crazy what you are facing down in the SEC this season. Like, it is just a hardcore gauntlet because you have to go from here, play at Auburn, play it's Kentucky, play Florida again, and then you have some even the quote unquote not great, or I'm not even going to say they're bad teams. The only bad team in the SEC is South Carolina. The not great teams like Vandy can get you on any given night in their weird building that has freaking voodoo on it. Anything can happen. So win's a win. That was a great win. You kind of ran away with it. Chaz Lanier right back on track. Huge game. Looks great. It was awesome. I actually like Kyle Beach mentioned this. He said Akpara's 3-pointer was big. That really was huge because Tennessee came out so flat offensively at the start of that second half, and they could not even put a shot up until there were 5 seconds left in the shot clock. And I was just watching, just going like, oh my gosh, come on, like do something. This is terrible. And it gets down to within the final 5 seconds of the shot clock. Akbara puts up kind of an emergency 3, drains it. And from there, Tennessee's offense was much more in line, whatever that kind of, shock to Tennessee's system that brought. It worked pretty well. And then, yeah, I mean, Larry Parker brings up, he says that he hopes that Meshack can keep scoring. That was huge. Jemai Meshack dropped in a few shots at key times. And it was a real team effort that I think showed that if you could translate that onto the road, this is one of the best teams in America. Now, I tweeted this over the weekend after that loss to Vandy. I do think this is true also. Your depth is in a tough spot, and it's going to be in a tough spot all season because Cam Carr left, because JP Estrella is out for the season. You're just close to shorthanded. You can put in, eventually down the bench, you can put in Bishop Boswell. He's not on the same level as your other guys in that backcourt. You can put in Darlinstone Dubar, who can have shining moments, or he can have a game like he did tonight where he's just sort of, I don't know, his head was in the clouds. He just wasn't playing great. And so I've kind of said, I think I said it last week. The starting 5 here is probably a top 5 team in America, at worst, close to that. And after that, and the full structure of a team that has to go out and win a 40-minute basketball game twice a week, I'm a little more dubious. But the biggest test that you might have in the entire regular season is coming up this weekend at Auburn. And I'll ask you this, Zach. How are you feeling about that one? Of course, it's Bruce. Got to go to Bruce's house, go down to the Plains. Are you confident at all that Tennessee, with its lack of depth, can go and pull one off there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tennessee can go win the game, of course. I mean, they're, like you kind of said with the SEC already, it's just such a gauntlet right now that anybody can beat anybody in that top half, it feels like. But going on the road, there's going to be a lot of energy in that place. College game days there. That's a huge game. I mean, if I'm putting money on it, I think you've got to wager on Auburn just because it's at Auburn. That's just so tough to go win on the road. And this time of year, it's such a grind. Like, this is the time of the year in college basketball where you really have to grind it out. I mean, it's late January, early February that you know the tournament's around the corner, but you've still got a month and a half of basketball left. I mean, this is that stretch of the season. It's kind of like August in the baseball season, or October going into November in college football season, where you've just really got to grind it out. And it's just one of those games I can see coming down to the last 1 or 2 possessions, and it's anyone's guess whether the shot falls or not. And with it being at home, I think you have to give Auburn the edge. But it feels like that kind of game to me, where neither team runs away with it. Whoever gets hot and has the shots go down in the last minute, 2 minutes of the game
hits free throws, that's the team that wins. It feels like that kind of game, and those are impossible to predict. So, I mean, college basketball is the hardest thing to bet on anyway, I think. So it feels like that kind of game.
Brandon asks, why is that a problem on the road but not at home? If I knew the answer to that question, I may have Rick Barnes' job myself. So, spreading on the road is hard. Like, it is just kind of a thing, just like football. You can't necessarily explain it, but just like shots don't drop the same way. And then the depth, as far as that goes, it hasn't necessarily been a problem across the board on the road. Your depth was massive. Your depth was the reason you won that Texas game. The reason you went to Austin and won was because Darlington Dubar came in and kind of saved your butt at the end. Oh, you're saying my mic is messed up. Hold on. Did that fix it at all?
No.
Anything?
About the same. I thought you were about to throw it there for a second, which would have been, I would have clipped that real quick and had it on Twitter before the end of the show.
I kind of feel like doing that.
Maybe you should. No, no, it's like an echoey, scratchy. Lots of yeah. There's a Darth Vader, little higher pitch than James Earl Jones, but it's in that range.
Well, I could do this for right now.
That is yes, clearer, but yeah.
That's just that. I mean, hold on. I think this will sound exponentially better. I'll put it through my AirPod here. Is that?
Yeah, either way.
No,
that can work.
Okay, that does work. All right, I'm gonna have to turn you up a little bit here. There.
Yeah.
All right. So that's better. Apologies. That's really annoying. No big deal. Just have an entire board and a setup with a microphone, and it has to malfunction. That's awesome.
That's how it goes.
But with the depth, I mean, the depth was I guess I don't know how much of that was bad audio. But Brandon asked, why is the depth a problem on the road and not at home? I mean, that's not necessarily true across the board, but it's just sort of, it's like in football where you get overwhelmed and just the feeling's different. It's a different rim than you're used to. Yeah, whatever it is, it can just throw you off. But it can also be like at that Texas game, Darlington Dubar came off the bench and saved your butt. So the depth can absolutely be effective. Jordan Gainey is one of the biggest pieces of this team when his shot is on. And so just figure it out. Keep pressing forward. And I think it's just almost a shame to me that you had to lose two really useful players, because I think this team has really special potential. They're really, really balanced when they're playing well, and they bring just tons of heat on defense. The defense tonight was on a complete other level. That was concerning in that Vandy game. The defense, the wheels just came flying off. And against Auburn, to go back to that, against Auburn, that's going to be the name of the game in that one, is can you play defense? And also, is Janai Broome playing? I think somebody brought that up in the comments before my mic crapped out. Janai Broome, National Player of the Year candidate, is kind of between like him and the kid at Duke right now, Cooper Flagg. And he went out with a pretty terrible ankle injury last week. And I did look this up on Twitter a second ago. The esteemed Stephen Pearl, Bruce Pearl's kid, who is an assistant coach for Auburn, he was on a radio show, it looks like this morning, and he said Janai Broome is out of his broom, but not out of his broom.
Out of his broom.
Out of his boot. Another B word. Out of his boot, but is not practicing. Quote, if the doctors say he's cleared and Janai doesn't think he's 100%, then we don't want him to play. We don't want Janai to come back until he's ready to come back.
Yeah. That's one where, he
doesn't play. I think he
doesn't. It's January. I mean, Auburn has the same goal Tennessee does to make a Final Four and try to make a run. You can't risk. I know it's a huge game for both teams, and it's It's Auburn, Tennessee. It's Bruce Pearl, Tennessee. Even though it's been a long time since Bruce Pearl was at Tennessee, this game still has special meaning in that sense, I think. So it's a meaningful game, but you can't trot him out there just because of that. I mean, if you're Auburn, you have to make sure he's good to go for late February, March, SEC tournament, NCAA tournament. You can't afford to lose him in a late January game that really, if Auburn loses this game, it doesn't change their championship outlook one bit, especially if he doesn't play. And same for Tennessee. I mean, if they lose this game, especially if it's a close game, if it's a shot that doesn't go down at the end and that's why you lose, I don't think you feel any differently about this team. So it's a big game, but it's not necessarily going to determine the postseason outlook for either team. I don't think, though it's a game that you have a win on your resume. It can help your seeding for sure, but not worth losing your best player for an extended amount of time.
Is the mic better now?
Yeah, it's a miracle.
Okay, great. I fully unplugged and replugged everything back in.
That always works.
So, note to self, just take out the cartridge, blow on it. So I think Broom probably not playing, and if you can stop, they have Baker Mazzara and just a whole bunch of dudes that can just rain threes on you. But the thing is this, Tennessee's the best 3-point defense in America. And so come with your A game on defense. Whatever happened in that Vandy game and you've had just periods during some games this season. It wasn't just isolated to that Vandy game. In other games too, where I've just been watching and gone, what is it? What defense are we playing right now? It's like they can go from hard-nosed, probably best defense in America, like they played in the first half of this game against Mississippi State, to whatever the heck that was against Vandy.
You think it's where they still have some new pieces that are gelling? I mean, you still got Milicic, Akpara, Lanier, 3 players you're leaning heavily on are still brand new, essentially, to this program. I mean, I know that's the norm now, but in the sport, just in sports in general, that's not traditionally how you build teams. And I think we forget that still takes some time to build that chemistry and to build that trust with each other and just knowing where everybody's at on the floor at all times. Even though it's Red Barnes' hallmark, it's still something that takes time. I mean, which is, you want it to get better and you have less by the end of the season, you have no games like that where you don't have these lapses. But I don't think it's shocking to have some of those from time to time.
Definitely not. And to your point, I was busy changing the mics when you were talking about Janai Broom. I do think you're right. They got to be thinking long term with him. The season is not one game against Tennessee, even though it's such a great matchup with Tennessee's former coach and yada yada. So if Broom's out, you play great defense, especially on the perimeter. The game's there to win. Obviously, you have to flip around and score. Something like what Dalton Knecht did against Auburn last year would be pretty nice.
Oh, yeah.
I'll say that much. That was a dire situation. If you go back and watch, Tennessee, I think, got down by 10 on its home floor last year, and Knecht just floated down like an angel and dropped, 20 or something in the final, 10 minutes of that game. And you ended up winning, and something like that out of a Chaz Lanier. He's kind of struggled on the road, and then he has this great recovery game. Had a great game against Vandy too. He was your leading scorer against Vandy. I think he made 4 out of 6 threes against Vandy or something, and then he was awesome tonight. And just continue that into this Auburn game. Do that on the road, and this is very winnable for Tennessee. If I have to predict, I think Tennessee probably loses. I think if Broom was playing, I think Tennessee probably gets kind of pounded in that game. That's not to say Auburn is a head and shoulders above Tennessee. Auburn has created a really great home environment.
Yeah, it's huge.
Genuinely. Yeah, it's a small arena.
That's what Bruce Pearl does, man.
Yes. They pack it to the absolute gills. It's a Saturday. I would love to see stats of teams winning on Saturday SEC away games compared to Tuesday or Wednesday road SEC games. I bet there are so many more Tuesday, Wednesday road SEC wins away, because the environment is typically so much more raucous on those Saturdays. College game day is going to be there.
Yeah.
It's just a huge game. So I'll say Tennessee keeps it respectable. If I got to call like how it goes, you probably trail most of the game. Maybe you get it down, you swap lead a couple times, but ultimately I just with the road environment and the dudes in addition to Broom that Auburn has, that's going to be a tough one. So, hey, hopefully we're wrong. I have been the optimist lately, and even I'm going, I'm not sure. After that, the Ohio State game has turned me cold. I'm back to being the my old negative self now.
Yeah, it turns out that was just not fun for anybody to play Ohio State. Texas just kind of helped hung in there because they have a really good secondary.
So we didn't even mention that Ohio State won the national title in football. I mean, frankly, who cares? I don't really have that many feelings about it outside of it. Just annoys me that Ohio State won a national championship. But and the fact that a freaking course Tennessee had to play the buzzsaw eventual national championship in their building in the first round as the freaking 6th seed.
Yeah, nobody was beating Ohio State, but it would have been nice to play SMU or Boise State or somebody and at least finish 11-3, get that second game, or who knows what happens. Maybe you go all the way to a championship game and run into Ohio State, whatever. Just not playing Ohio State in the first round.
Well, maybe we can get back next year and get different seats. They're probably going to change that rule, of course, with the automatic bids. So it would be different next year. Just get back there. Nothing big. It's not too hard to do. And that'll take us
real quick. Kyle mentioned there in the comments. What do you this game time of Auburn, Tennessee being at 8:30 at night? I don't love that. Something about either. Saturday basketball, like you're talking about, feels like it should be afternoon, early evening at the latest. I don't know. There's something about that game being at like 2:00, 4:00 that would feel right to me.
The perfect basketball time is 2:00.
Yeah.
Like that's just noon is too early. 8:30 is way too late. 4 is a good start time. Although you start really horning into dinner time with a 4:00.
Yeah, you're right. 2 is perfect because you don't have to rush and you've got post game plans are wide open, whatever you want to do after a 2:00 game.
You just walk right out into dinner time. I mean,
yeah.
So, and the late, especially the late midweek games, like a 9:00 game on a Tuesday. Can I tell you, man, the fact that I no longer have to do media for 9 p.m. Eastern time Tuesday night basketball games.
Yeah, that's rough.
Oh, you don't get out of there till stinking 12:30. Rick, like he's great to media. He genuinely is great to media, allows a lot of access, and he's a fun dude to interview. He takes forever to get to the mic, and you're sitting there and it's midnight and you just go, Rick, I swear, get out here and talk to us so I can go to sleep. and very happy to not have to do that anymore. So I could do with that game being midday, but hey, Elias says, what time was that 2008 Memphis game? I remember where I was watching that game. I'm pretty sure it was like a 6:00. I'm feeling like, because I remember at least part of it being dark outside. Maybe it was just the end. Maybe I'm wrong there. Somebody correct me. But
Kyle says it was a 7:30.
7:30 all-time classic.
You were in the right
great poll.
You were the right half of the day though. So
yeah. I just specifically, I remember where I was. The place where I was had like big plate glass windows, and I remember it being dark outside. So there you go.
Maybe it was 9.
All right.
Not sure. Elias saying 9. It was late. It was later in the day.
9. Huh. Dang. Well, I mean, hey, maybe the 8:39 p.m. slot will be good to Tennessee.
Maybe.
Obviously, one of the great road wins in the history of Tennessee basketball. So, okay. Anything else with basketball before we move on, Zach, to a little bit of football here?
No, let's just have some fun Saturday all day waiting for that game. That's the other part. You just gotta wait all day.
Yeah, Well, we'll see what happens. I'm saying my prayers. Maybe Janai Broom being out. And the thing is this, if you can win that game, you got and you steal one at Auburn with Janai Broom out, you got Kentucky at home and Florida at home, which would knock out two of the big contenders, if obviously assuming Tennessee plays well and wins at home. You'll kind of be in the catbird seat for another SEC title. Two in a row would not be bad if you can steal one at Auburn and then win those two games at home. But we'll see. All right, let's talk a little bit of football before we bounce out of here. Zach, transfer portal news, final AP poll, and some way too early top 25 polls for Tennessee football. Let's talk about it all right after I tell the good folks at home about Farm Bureau Health Plans. Farm Bureau Health Plans have been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some has stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200-plus locations across the state of Tennessee. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Go get yourself a health plan. Thanks to them. I guess I can also mention tomorrow night, Zach and I will be on the Talkin' Vols charity stream. I know, we're live on YouTube, so I might as well bring it up. I'm sure a lot of the folks that are watching this also watch Talkin' Vols. We'll be on the charity stream with our good pal Boogie, along with like half of the Tennessee media and also like a whole set of Tennessee athletes too. I think there's a pretty sweet lineup Boogie booked for that one. I don't know why he decided to include us, but hey, we'll take it. So watch out for us there. Also, now turning to football, Tennessee hasn't done a lot in the transfer portal, but they've done some, which is nice. They go out and they grab the running back from Duke, Star Thomas. He had I believe, a visit over the weekend, and then he just ultimately committed from there. And I like this pickup a lot because it not only gives you additional depth in that running back room, which I think is really key, especially after how you saw kind of how the season went. Deshaun Bishop going down and Dylan Sampson just getting the crap beaten out of him throughout the course of the season. But you really bring in a tenured guy in Star Thomas, a dude who's played a lot of college football. I have to think maybe he's, no offense to the ACC, but offense to the ACC. Maybe he's looking to kind of step up the league that he's playing in to SEC football, wants to come play for a playoff team, maybe, and a team that runs the ball a ton, even if it doesn't have that reputation on a national scale. I like this. I kind of wonder, is this the number one guy next year? It's obviously hard to know, but Deshaun Bishop was kind of your assumed number one. It's interesting. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I don't know how the rotation's going to play out. Honestly, I don't know if Tennessee's coaching staff knows at this point. You just kind of got to let competition build in the spring and the fall and see who really takes hold of the job. But I think you're going to see more of a, the three-headed monster attack like we saw in 2022 and 2023 with Sampson, Wright, and Small. That was really important because this year you leaned so heavily on Dylan Sampson, and you kind of had to, just the way the offense was playing. And I have some thoughts on that when we get into here in a bit, but he just took such a beating. Yeah, he had carried the ball like 258 times or something like that. I can't remember the exact number alone in 2024. The most carries he had in a single month was in November. It was about 110, 112. Carried the ball 2 times against Ohio State. He was just so beat up by that point in the season. He had nothing left to give. Now, you're probably not there without him and the way you had to ride him, but it's just not – you can't do that and play deep into these postseasons. Ohio State just played 16 games, and unless you're just a freak like Jeremiah Smith who somehow got through that 16-game schedule, unscathed as a true freshman, which is insane, that doesn't happen often, and that's not the same workload as a running back, obviously. So having Peyton Lewis, Deshaun Bishop, who both really, and especially Deshaun Bishop, such a surprise. The way he ran, you really liked his competitiveness and kind of what he showed on the field. And Lewis has some home run speed. You bring in a guy like Star Thomas, has the experience, like you mentioned, can catch the ball out of the backfield. Hopefully that's an element we see more of in this offense, whether it's check downs or, design plays to utilize running backs in the passing game, whatever it is. That's something they've got to figure out a way to use more. I know they like using the running backs in pass protection on some of those passing plays, and they don't really sneak them out, for those check downs just because of the wide splits and you don't have as much help close to the quarterback. But I think that's an element that you're going to have to figure out how to use. But keeping those guys fresh, as important as the run game is to Josh Heupel's offense, even when you're hitting those big plays, pass plays like you were in 2022, the run game was still incredibly important. So you can't have your best guys just so banged up by the end of the season when you get to December and in the playoff that they're unable to contribute. I mean, then, that's not what lost them the Ohio State game by any means, but and not having the full Dylan Sampson at full strength in that game certainly hurt your chances to get back in it and to operate your offense at its highest level. They just weren't able to do that. You can't throw a guy out there to take that kind of beating moving forward. And I think they knew that. That's why you pick up this running back out of the portal. Otherwise, you're going to have to lean on a true freshman to play in that number 3 role and the pass protection aspect that's so important. We saw Dylan Sampson struggle with that some when he was a true freshman in 2022. He got Hendon Hooker completely blown up in Baton Rouge and in that LSU game, and was on the bench for a little bit after that. But he learned from that and he grew from that and he became a better player. You don't want to go through those growing pains, with Dwayne Morris, who's probably going to be a really good running back that you stole from USC. You just don't want him to have to be that from day one. Maybe you work him into the season. Who knows what happens with injuries? You can't predict any of that. Who makes it through the season and who doesn't? But it's nice to have this option and to bring this guy in, and we'll see how it shakes out. I don't think there's, last year we knew it was going to be Dylan Sampson, right? In 23, we kind of knew it was Jalen Wright's show, just with what he had shown and the leadership. Nobody has that going into this season. Maybe Lewis does it, maybe Bishop, maybe Star Thomas comes in and takes hold of that, but I think every rep in this offense at the running back position is up for grabs. I think that's a great thing because, it's cliche, but the competition, breeds greatness. Iron sharpens iron, all that kind of stuff. You're going to have a lot of that going on in the running back room this summer. We can't hear you there.
I just accidentally unplugged my mic. That was very cool. After all of this stuff,
Okay, well,
it's incredible. Hold on one second.
There, are we back?
I think so.
Not a great, not exactly an A+ night in the audio department for this show, but I am with you on all that. I did hear everything that you said, and I'm with you on all of that. I think that I think Kyle said it in these comments. They'll probably go back to that 3-man rotation again, and I hope, please, and Heupel hasn't really, even with the 3-man rotation back in 23, I wish that they would change to throwing the ball more to the running back. Please. It didn't happen a ton with Star Thomas at Duke. I was looking at his stats, but he did have some nice, two receptions for 45 yards and a touchdown against North Carolina. His game against North Carolina this year was monstrous. 166 on the ground, 5.5 yards a carry for a touchdown, and then 45 through the air for a touchdown on 2 receptions. So if you can get games out of that, like that, out of him, I think you got a dude here. And Peyton Lewis with the breakneck speed, Deshaun Bishop, who's just a nose to the grindstone, just runs super hard. I love that guy's mentality.
Mm-hmm.
He's a little injury prone. he's shown, which to the point, you need more depth. So
Yeah.
there you go. I think this was a smart pickup. I'm still concerned overall about the lack of guys that Tennessee has gotten out of the portal. You're running out of time. The semester started today or
I think so. This
yesterday?
week. Yeah, it should have been today, I would think.
I mean, at this point, does that completely matter? I mean, if Tennessee wants to bring a kid in, they'll like if somebody from Notre Dame transfers and Tennessee wants them and can get them, they'll figure it out. They'll find a way to work with admissions. But I want to see more because, hey, Star Thomas, this is nice. I think this is a pretty cool little pickup that they pulled out here. But I feel like you still need a wide receiver. You definitely still need an offensive lineman. I think you could stand probably a depth piece on your defensive line. I think you could do the same with your defensive backs.
You probably need a cornerback now that Jermon McCoy is torn his ACL. And I'm with you on the portal talk here. I think with McCoy, that's kind of the dark shadow hanging over the 2025 team at this point. That was one of your premier players, one of the guys you're excited about, future NFL player. I know there's talk about him coming back and contributing in 2025. I'm skeptical just because you just don't know how these ACL recoveries are going to go. There's setbacks. There's just I don't think you can be like, okay, this guy's going to be back by the beginning of October and set that in stone. Great if he is. I hope he is. I hope he's back in September and 100%. That would be amazing. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom here. We've seen how these injuries can linger in general with college football players. You saw with Cooper Mays. We didn't think he was going to miss a game, and he missed the whole first month. I mean, it happens. And for McCoy to come back and contribute this season, everything's going to have to go right for him and his recovery. And it just doesn't always happen that way. We'll see how that goes. I think you need to go get a cornerback to fill that role. And not necessarily just fill that role, but to supplement that role, because you have guys that you're going to play, young guys that maybe you're going to have to trust more than you wanted to. But the depth obviously takes a huge hit right off the bat with him not in the lineup. And then at the offensive line, you don't know with Andres Carriage if he's going to be back at this point next season or not. I mean, hopefully he's in a situation. I think it was like he played 5 games that one year, his first year at Tennessee, and barely played in that 5th game and got hurt. You're trying to get a waiver for that. NCAA doesn't have a lot of power left, but the little bit of power they have, they want to flex it if they can. Hopefully he comes back because he was playing really well. He understands this offense. He was rounding into a good player. But if he doesn't come back, you've got basically, you're hoping David Sanders comes in and can play from day one at right tackle, which I think he will. He seems like that kind of player. Yeah. I think he pretty quickly can probably be your best offensive lineman not too far into the season, if not from day one. You assume Lance Hurd will take a jump, kind of the way Carriage did, where you've had a year in this offense. He was injured last year, but you're replacing your right guard Spraggins with an Arizona transfer who you like a lot, but got to get him in this offense. You still don't really know who the center is going to be for sure, and you might have to replace the left guard too. It's tough. I mean, that's why you really want to see some of these guys develop, but at this point, I think you have to continue to try to find somebody. And then a wide receiver as well. To me, that's another tricky one because you would like to have another proven option. Amari Jefferson's nice, but he hasn't played yet. We'll see what he can do in this offense. I think he has high upside, and I'm excited about him, and I think he's going to be a good player, but you still got to do it. And Mike Matthews has got to prove he can be the guy that we all freaked out about leaving. Prove that you were worth freaking out over. And again, he's got the talent to do that, and I think he can, but he's got to go prove it. So, it would be nice for sure to have another really proven commodity at that position. And you saw other schools go out and get some of those guys. Georgia had to go get a couple. And Tennessee just really hasn't. And I don't know if it just hasn't worked out for them. They haven't had guys that they liked, or maybe the offensive troubles the last year or two is kind of making people a little more skeptical of transferring to Tennessee. I don't know what it is, but you're really gambling on youth at that position going into the season.
From the comments, have we heard the rumors about Carnell Tate leaving Ohio State? I have not. Is that a real rumbling?
I don't know. I mean, you keep seeing these rumors, right? They asked him about it after the game last night, and at first he kind of said something like, "I'm just trying to enjoy this championship with my team," but then he made a comment about wanting to come back next year and win another one with his team, and he told Brian Hartline in front of reporters that he better not go anywhere. I don't know. I remember when he committed to Ohio State, he did an interview with The Athletic, I think, and he talked about NIL and how that wasn't the driving factor because it's all about getting to the NFL and the money will come if you play. Like, it seemed like his head was in the right place when it came to that discussion. Obviously, he's getting NIL money. I mean, it's not like he's passing up on it, but it didn't feel like that was what his decision was made on. I remember at the time, it felt like Tennessee gave him a similar package that Ohio State was giving him. So it wasn't like Tennessee wasn't willing to pay or anything like that. I mean, it came down to just wanting to go to Ohio State because they have a track record at this point. Tennessee's trying to build a track record. In my mind, there could be an ego thing where it's like, I want to be the number one guy because Jeremiah Smith's there. That's the guy. But also, like, why would you not want to play opposite Jeremiah Smith where he's going to command all of that attention? Ibuka's going to be gone, so you're going to be the number two guy. You've already had a really good, second year there at Ohio State. I would love. I mean, look, if he wants to come to Tennessee, he'd instantly be the top receiver. Yes, we will. Take him and throw the ball to him as much as he likes. I just don't see why he would make that decision. Like, objectively, looking at it from like a non-Tennessee, non-Ohio State, like, why would you leave the team that just won the championship? Now they are going to have a new quarterback, so maybe that plays into the decision. I don't know. I mean, Nico was trying to recruit him at that time to come to Tennessee as part of Nico's class, so there's a relationship there. And you never say never. I'm not saying Carnell Tate's not coming to Tennessee by any means. I have no idea. Just on the surface, it's like, why would he make that move?
I will put it this way: if the kid's willing to listen, throw a number out to him or something and say, hey, if you're looking to leave, consider us. You got to do that at a minimum. But if Carnell Tate, for some reason, was asking me for life advice, I think it would be stupid for him to leave Ohio State. I mean,
Ohio State and
move, but
LSU right now, most of the LSU receivers are guys from Louisiana that are just stud players that are going to be good no matter where they go. Those are the two programs sending the receivers to the NFL right now. When you look at like the top guys in the NFL, most of them seem like came from either LSU or Ohio State. So it's Tennessee's just going to have to chip away at that. I mean, there's just no overnight, we're going to throw money at every single one of them and get everybody here, and we're going to regain this wide receiver U deal. That's going to take time. It takes a lot of time to kind of rebuild that reputation. And like I said, you just got to chip away at it.
Elias brings up an interesting point. He said that the best thing for us at this point would be for Dion to bail at Colorado and free up those guys in the transfer portal. Yeah, I mean, obviously the rumors swirling there that he could be the guy for the Cowboys.
A couple guys, and Jordan Seaton, Cam Michael, some guys that almost ended up at Tennessee that went to Colorado instead. Cam Michael's he was an athlete, I guess. He's a receiver, I guess, at Colorado. So, maybe.
I mean, that Jordan Seaton one, you were the number 2, and he kind of swerved you right at the end.
Yeah. And he started at Colorado as a true freshman, and he had like a rough first 2 games, which means a true freshman. Then he allowed 0 sacks, like his final 10 games of the season or something like that.
Yes, he would be welcomed here with open arms. Now, both tackle spots are taken. Although if you brought in it's a guy like that,
some of these players, look, this isn't. Some of these players need to trust coaches when it comes to offensive line and the positions that they should play, because everybody wants to be the left tackle, and that's just not the best spot sometimes. And Darnell Wright is proof of that. He was a number 10 overall pick as a right tackle and is playing well in the NFL. Trey Smith. I mean, everybody thought Trey Smith was a tackle, and he played some tackle, looked like a tackle coming out of high school, and he's maybe the best right guard in the NFL. Probably going to be the highest paid guard once he gets to free agency here in a couple months. It's just you got to go where you're best suited to play. And if a Lance Hurd, if you think he could be a better left guard, I'm not saying he should move to left guard. I'm not an offensive line coach or an offensive line evaluator. But that's something that these players have got to trust the coaches on sometimes. And look, Glenn Ellerby he moved Darnell Wright from left tackle to right tackle, and made that decision, and it worked out. So you gotta trust these coaches. And sometimes it's just what you have stuck in your head isn't what makes sense. We saw with Jalen Hurd, a number of guys that have this sometimes. Who's the wide receiver out of Chattanooga that Tennessee quit recruiting that's there right now? Maybe somebody can help in the comments, but he should probably be a linebacker. He should probably be a linebacker, and he wants to be a receiver, and he's going to end up at a smaller school because of that. And who knows where his career goes as a receiver. If you're not good enough to have Tennessee pursue you as a receiver, you're probably not, I don't know, going to end up in the NFL, especially with this staff. Maybe the previous staff that passed on Ladd McConkey, that would work out. But it's one of those things that frustrates me sometimes about recruits.
Maybe one day Tennessee can get one of those speedy little white receivers like Georgia always seems to have. But thanks for opening up that wound again, the Ladd McConkey thing.
That one's especially frustrating because they just didn't offer him, and he would have ran to Tennessee.
So stupid. But no matter how you slice it, Tennessee has plenty of spots where I think they could use the help, and I'm just kind of baffled that there's not more movement in the transfer portal. It would just. Maybe they think what they got is more than enough. I'm not sure, but I just feel like, really, you think you got enough dudes right now? It just doesn't feel like it. But hey, we're not in the facility every day. Far be it from me.
I think this is kind of the view I'm getting over the last several months, year or so, just kind of watching some of the transfer stuff play out. I don't think there's as many impact players as we all think there are. And there are some huge impact players that make a big difference in the portal. Don't get me wrong. But not every guy that enters the portal is an impact player, even if they had decent stats at their previous school. And we're starting to see some examples of that. I mean, the guy that went from Texas to Washington that withdrew after 2 days. I mean, that was Jonte Cook, I think was the receiver's name. Or Isaiah Bond going from Alabama to Texas and just a non-factor, had a terrible playoff. I mean, not every one of these guys are exactly what you think they are just because they hit the portal. And I think Tennessee's staff, maybe they err on the side of caution a little too much. Maybe they do need to take a few more swings at some of these guys just to see what happens, because maybe you hit on one and it changes the whole direction of your season. But I think for the most part, they've done a pretty good job of evaluating the players that they do take. And we've mentioned this before, most of the players they take end up playing at Tennessee, some sort of role that's meaningful. It doesn't mean they end up being all SEC players, but they end up being guys that you use, every week. They're not duds, I guess you'd say.
Richard said, I think Tennessee hit the transfer portal too late, and a lot of players see Tennessee as desperate, so their asking price was way too much.
Yeah, I do think they kind of mismanaged the timing of it. And I think that was with the playoff. It was new, and Tennessee didn't. I don't think they really – it just moved so fast. I mean, you can waste one day and get completely behind if you're just not on it, just on a random Thursday, and everybody else kind of jumps in front of you. That could screw your whole, winter window up. And I think Tennessee struggled with that a little bit with the timing of the that first playoff game and being before Christmas and the practices and the signing day getting moved up and earlier in December. It was just a weird time. And I think that that played a factor in some of that.
Yeah, I theorized that a couple of weeks ago that it kind of felt like that may have happened where they just got behind the 8 ball. I don't think they completely got exposed. Like it's not a total failure or anything like that, but it does just seem like they're sort of they got behind and they're having to make a comeback, sort of. But hey, we'll see if there's anything else that comes of it. Obviously, we will talk about it here if that does happen. But let's finish with this, Zach. A couple of things. The final AP poll for the season came out, and Tennessee finishes at number 9. I saw this tweet that for the first time since 2007, Tennessee finishes ahead of Alabama in the final AP poll. And that's a nice feeling. I will say that sort of our predictions for Saban leaving have been coming true to a certain extent, where they're sort of coming all the way back down to earth. That's nice to see. But that conversation, of course, immediately turned to every media outlet in the entire college football world putting out a way too early top 25 for next season. And this range, the ones that I saw, for the most part, Tennessee was like 10 to 15, somewhere in there. The ones that shocked me were ones that had Florida and South Carolina both ahead of Tennessee. I don't remember exactly. That might have been 247. ESPN's
Mark Schlabach, or yeah.
South Carolina had a fun team with a really good defense this year, but they're in a similar boat to Tennessee, except even worse in that they haven't collected a gaggle of elite players. And I will always be skeptical of a team that doesn't have like a nice bullpen of elite players. And Tennessee's right there. Let me be 100% clear. Tennessee has some elite players, 5-star blue chip guys, big time dudes, but not a ton like your Georgias and your Ohio States and these guys. And so I'll just always be skeptical. And I think South Carolina roster wise is in a tougher position than Tennessee. So I'm skeptical there. And Florida, I mean, is that just based on DJ Lagway? Like just purely, DJ Lagway looked like a dog in the latter half of the season, I guess. Because otherwise, I think it's kind of similar. Like, I'm not sure that they've amassed the talent, and they definitely don't have the talent at the coaching position with their team. Elias says clearly it's because they got Harrison Bailey. Obviously, it was Harrison Bailey. Yes. A pickup that when I saw it, my first thought was, he's going to play against Tennessee and he's going to score like 7 touchdowns. That's what's going to happen, of course. But I obviously I do not have strong feelings on the way too early top 25s, but it's interesting talking points just to see the national perception of Tennessee right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like that. Somebody said it earlier in the comments. Like, are they just going to fall 10 spots every offseason in these early rankings from where they actually finish? Because that's pretty much what happens every single year. The Florida one is weird. Like, they won some games at the end of the year. You beat Ole Miss, right? And Ole Miss had a good team, but Lane Kiffin always screws it up somehow. And he screwed it up, this past season, losing to Kentucky. The worst SEC loss last season was Ole Miss losing at home to Kentucky. There wasn't one worse. And Jackson Dart, I know he gets a lot of draft love, and for the most part, he's a good player. But when you need him to come through, he tries his best to throw an interception. I think it was it the Florida game where he threw like 3 in a row and one got called back, and then he threw another one. It was like Ole Miss should have won that game. I mean, they should have won that game in the swamp, and they just didn't. So Florida, like the narrative on Billy Napier and that whole deal switched so quickly, and he did a good job. And Lagway is a dog, like Kyle says, he's a good player, and they'll ride him and they'll win some games because of him. But I don't think they're a better team than Tennessee suddenly just because they won a few games at the end of the season. They started out blown out by Texas, who Texas ultimately, Arizona State was their best win of the season, I guess. Was that it? Yeah. I mean, and they played Ohio State closer than anyone else, but still, I don't understand the love there. But ultimately, we think preseason rankings that come out in late August are silly because they end up looking nothing like the end of the season for the most part, and teams get the benefit of the doubt in playoff rankings, the AP poll, all that stuff. The perception, it matters, and we saw that this season. I think with the playoff, is all those debates that we had about who belongs in, who doesn't. But at the end of the day, Ohio State was the best team in the country at the right time. They lost some games they shouldn't have. They got in because it's the 12-team playoff. If you're outside that top 12, I don't think the next Ohio State's coming from outside that top 12. So people kind of got to lay off of the voting on teams by perception and just whatever happens on the field. But in one instance, though, I do think these rankings are a good thing for Tennessee because the motivation factor, and the more you see championship teams, whether it's the NFL, college football, whatever sport, that's like the driving factor of these teams ended up winning it all. It's always no one believed in us and we were proving everybody wrong. The Buffalo Bills did it after beating the Ravens, and I don't think anybody was shocked that the Buffalo Bills beat the Ravens. That was not shocking in the least. The fact is the Bills and the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, like, of course it is. That's probably what everyone predicted before the season. Georgia does it with Kirby Smart. Ryan Day clearly used it with Ohio State in this run. I mean, it's what you constantly hear is like the disrespect, the motivation. That's what keeps these teams locked in. Like if you can tap into that as a coach, which I think something Heupel probably, does well for the most part. He did it the best in 22, when Golish was there, except for the South Carolina game. You got to do it every single week, especially in crunch time. So utilize this stuff. Everybody writes Tennessee off every offseason. They're the dark horse team. Nobody really thought they were going to make the playoff last year. Like you saw a few predictions, but it was Ole Miss. It was Alabama, LSU, Missouri was a couple of people's guesses. Use that, use it as motivation. Use it to prove those people wrong. Like buy into that all off season. If they're going to put it out there, use it. But outside of that, these rankings mean absolutely nothing. We have no clue what it's going to look like next year. Rosters are still incomplete. Injuries happen, like the Jermon McCoy deal. You don't know what's going to happen in spring practice. It's just so much changes. And then inevitably what we think it's going to look like in September and October, something happens to turn that completely upside down. And suddenly someone's on the hot seat or somebody's surging. You just don't know.
It is one of the most infuriating things that happens each year in football is the preseason rankings and the effect that it ultimately has on the way that the whole season plays out in terms of rankings, especially now that the rankings have a huge bearing on who makes it into the playoff. Like your preseason ranking has a huge bearing on how high you're able to hop early in the season with nice wins.
And you ultimately did nothing to earn that.
Right. It's just, the guy at the Associated Press thought you were pretty good before the season started. And so suddenly your path to number 5 is a lot easier than, whoever else. But I think Tennessee will end up being 15th preseason in the AP poll, something like that. It just feels like it's going to be, hey, they were in the playoff last year. They got a returning quarterback who's a Heisman dark horse and a solid set of players. That's going to be the discussion. You'll be, somewhere in there, 10 to 20. I think that's where Tennessee will most likely be. And good. Just like you said, use it as motivation to say they don't believe in us. They don't think that you're real, that you're elite, that you're great. Let's go out there and prove them wrong. Because if you can continue to win every game at home and then steal a game in Tuscaloosa, finally win in the swamp, something like that, you're right back in the playoff. So
that's the toughest thing about next season is, we saw this year, like 10-2. That's the mark, right? Unless it's a crazy season, I'm sure at some point a 9-3 team will get in, just because that's how the way the season goes, like a 2007 type season. But 10-2. I mean, if you're an SEC team, that's what you got to shoot for. You've got to beat Georgia at home, or you got 3 games: Georgia at home, at Florida, at Alabama. You have to win 2 of those 3 games. Something you have not done in quite some time. You have to do in 2025, basically, to make the playoff. That's daunting. I mean, but you got to go do it. I mean, if you want to be that team, you got to go be that team.
I mean, there was a reason the super early betting odds for total wins came out, and Tennessee's was 9.5. Do you think Tennessee will beat Georgia and Neyland? Do you think they will not? You know, it's kind of that question. So yeah, there's that. I just struggle to have strong feelings about that stuff at this point in the season. So I think that's a show. We'll wrap her up. It's already what? Usually we're wrapping this up at 7 p.m. and it's 10 o'clock. So we will probably be back to our normal schedule next week, Monday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan. Anything else for the folks at home, Zach, before we bounce?
No, I think that should do it. Let's have a fun conference championship weekend, and hopefully Tennessee beats Auburn.
Go Vols. Go beat Bruce. You have a great opportunity with Janai Broom likely out. Not confirmed out, but probably not playing. So go win that game, because that will be a special one to steal. It'd be kind of like winning at Alabama last year, where you kind of went in and I was like, yeah, there's no way that we're winning this game. That's okay. That place is a house of horrors for us. Yada. And then you went in and you won. Just go do that. Nice and easy. Go beat the number 2 team in America. It's not a big deal. All right. Again, Charlie Burst, Zach Reagan. Thanks to everybody for watching. Kyle, Richard, Elias, I see, along with everybody else who commented, hung out with us. It always means the world. We couldn't do it without you. Thanks again, and we will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.